Over the past few years, Mach-Hommy has gone from an obscure name in underground hip-hop to one of the most exciting artists alive today. He built his brand off of his mystique, but as the years have gone by, he's slowly let us see bits of what's behind the mask. He has one of the most impressive discographies in hip-hop, releasing almost 50 projects over the years, many of which have become the stuff of legends, only available to those who know someone who was lucky enough to invest in Mach-Hommy at the right time. You may know him from his game-changing techniques of doing business as an independent artist, you may know him for his unique vocal style and lyricism, or you may know nothing about him at all. But no matter how much you know about Mach, this video is for you, because here is everything you need to know about Mach-Hommy. Mach-Hommy is an underground rap legend, but to fully understand how deep his legend goes, you have to look at what he's done outside of the rap game. If you ever ask, where in the world is Mach-Hommy right now, the answer may be on his farm taking care of his cows, or he may be hanging out with George Lopez and Exhibit, or he may even be in the Hunger Games, but I'll get to that later. Mach-Hommy was born in 1982 in Port-au-Prince, Haiti, coming from a long line of artists and intellectuals. His grandfather was a justice of peace, even running for Haitian Senate. Many of his uncles were sculptors and woodworkers, and his father was a semi-pro football player, folk guitarist, and songwriter. Mach has even said that he gets his work ethic from his mother, who was his earliest supporter. Mach and his family moved to Newark, New Jersey when he was the age of 9. He would get involved with music early on, playing trumpet as a kid, but the crime-filled world of Newark swallowed him up, and he ended up finding his calling on the streets, dropping out of high school and gravitating towards crime to outsmart the system. Mach-Hommy started rapping as a teenager, but I'll get more into that in the next section of the video. He had a few close calls with death, and ended up getting arrested in 2007. These roadblocks convinced him to reconnect with his creative spirit, teaching himself videography, and eventually falling in love with filmmaking. He wrote many scripts, trying to capture the crime-filled world that he lived in for so long, and while living in Atlanta, he worked on a variety of film and television sets. He took a few roles as extras in big-budget movies that were filming in the area. You can even see him in the background of The Hunger Games and Insurgent from the Divergent series. At this point, the last known movie that he worked on was the 2014 Godzilla. In recent years, most of the time that we see Mach-Hommy in the wild, it is quite literally in the wild. He has said that he has a passion for husbandry, which is the care, cultivation, and breeding of animals. He is an avid fisherman and hunter, and it's even believed that he owns his own farm these days. Mach-Hommy is clearly someone who values his privacy, so I do want to ask you all to be respectful and not put any confidential information about him in the comments. There is always more lore to dig into if you really want to, but I think it's important to still maintain a little mystery with him. So now let's move on to what we all came here for, the music. Mach-Hommy fell in love with rap at an early age, being most inspired by MCs and groups like Prodigy, Capone and Noriega, the Fugees, Sean Price, and the Boot Camp Clique. After he learned the trumpet, his love for language transitioned his musical passion into writing raps as a teenager. He kept his early raps to himself until he was 13 and busted his first freestyle over Raekwon's Verbal Intercourse. After seeing people's reactions to his rap, it gave him the confidence he needed to keep going. Mach had so much reverence for hip-hop's greats that he spent the next few years honing his craft and putting in the work as an MC. He started freestyling a bunch in New Jersey and New York, entering cyphers anytime he could, and getting involved in the local battle rap scene. He started using the name Mach-Hommy around 2001, but the earliest known song from him at this point wasn't released until 2004. On May 24th, 2004, Mach-Hommy and Rosewood's song Eat the Bullets appeared on a Peetee mixtape. It's likely that earlier Mach-Hommy music was made and released before then, but this is the earliest track that we have right now, so it's worth mentioning. The earliest album that we have from Mach-Hommy is called Goon Grizzle. There is no clear release date for Goon Grizzle, but it is widely believed that it was released later on in 2004, and eventually would be re-released in 2017. This album is a great look into who Mach-Hommy was at his most raw. The album is hard and street-oriented, without the more abstract touches that he would master later on, but still with a style that was completely unique to him. One project that he supposedly released before Goon Grizzle was called Bulletproof Love, not to be confused with the album that he would release later on in his career called Bulletproof Love. Not much is really known about this original record, except for the fact that some fans on Twitter were asking for a re-release, way back when Goon Grizzle was in the process of getting a re-release of its own. Mach-Hommy stopped rapping for a while to focus on his film career, but picked it back up in the late aughts, rapping under the name Slim Dola. He released the EP Back to the Future under this name in 2011. He was supposedly planning on releasing a full-length album under this name at one point, but unfortunately he got in a bad car accident around 2012, marking the end of this stage of his career. During this era, he also rapped under the aliases Slime Dollars and Dola on a few tracks as well. The car crash that he was in put a major halt on his career, and was a real turning point for his life at the time. He was laid up recovering for the better part of a year, so he had a lot of time to take in art and think. When he returned under the name Mach-Hommy, he was ready to go on one of the greatest runs in hip-hop. In July of 2013, he released Super Tape, which has become one of the most elusive projects of his whole catalog. Super Tape was a compilation of 30 songs from 10 EPs that he released monthly from September 2012 to June 2013. Each of these EPs contained 3 tracks, and when put together, they became Super Tape. The EPs Depth Come in Threes, I Grade, Good Grease, Goodbye Uncle Tom, Well-Breducated, Mayday, and Foreign Objects have all been found, with the December 2012 EP still lost outside of the track Newark, which ended up on his album FYI. The EPs from October and November 2012 are still missing as well. Many of the original Super Tape tracks ended up on FYI, which is the earliest Mach-Hommy album that most people have heard, since it's his earliest thing available on streaming. FYI is an amazing record that really shows off Mach's versatility, rapping over a number of different styles, even using trap drums on some of the songs here. This era was very important for Mach-Hommy, as this is where he was able to really experiment and find his unique style and voice. This was the last era of his career, where there still are large chunks of missing pieces of his story. The mystery lives on, as fans are still finding out new things about his backstory to this day. During this time, he was able to start his career and plant the seeds of what would become one of the most unique personas in hip-hop. In 2014, he would connect with another artist who was building a legendary brand, and together, they would reach new heights. Throughout the early era of Mach-Hommy rapping, he was involved with the group The Winners, but he was still focusing primarily on his film career at the time. Hus Kingpin is an MC from The Winners, who he had known since around 2004. In 2014, he connected Mach to Westside Gunn to have him work on some music videos, and eventually the 3-part documentary on Gunn's Hitler Wears Hermes mixtape. While Mach was working on this documentary, the Griselda crew got word that Mach was a rapper himself, and a good one at that. Once they heard his music, Mach had officially re-entered the rap game and would make music with Griselda going forward. In May of 2016, Mach was featured on the classic Griselda compilation EP called Don't Get Scared Now. His time as an official Griselda member was short-lived, but it gave us some incredible music. Later that year, on August 17th, he released the album HBO, Haitian Body Odor, an album that would become one of the most important of his career. This album marks the first of what he would call his Haitian pentalogy, followed by Wap Kun Joj, Pray for Haiti, Balance Cho, and Rich Ass Haitian. Mach's Haitian heritage is so intertwined to who he is as an artist. He literally wears the Haitian flag over his face, letting his heritage be his identity. He wears a mask to not only let the music do the talking, but to put his roots on full display, and let fans know who he is and where he comes from. HBO is possibly the first time that we hear Mach-Hommy fully formed. This album features many of the styles and vocal techniques that he would become known for moving forward, and it also features some of the most important songs that he's ever recorded. Noqh painted the cover to this album himself, so it really is a complete and full display of his artistry. The cover is a painting of Michelle Bennett, the former First Lady of Haiti, and represents the complicated history of his home country. This album also marked a turning point for Noqh as an independent businessman. When he released this record, he sold 187 copies for $300 each, exclusively through Instagram DMs. Noqh bet on himself and relied on word of mouth to carry the music as far as it could go. In that moment, he knew that he would rather have 187 die-hard fans than 1,000 people who would only stream the album on Spotify and not have any stake in the art. Noqh would take this business model and expand it later on in his career, and this technique has been copied and imitated by many artists since then. Noqh has said that this direct-to-consumer model was only ever used before him by Nipsey Hussle. May he rest in peace. Going back in time just a bit, Mach-Hommy also released an album called ETA Greek Fest around 2015. This 7-track album was supposedly sold for $1,000 and was only recovered by fans recently in 2024. Most of these tracks ended up getting reused on separate records, but it did feature a song called Hollywood Lounge, which had Noqh rapping over a house beat, being one of the first times that we'd hear Noqh go in this sonic direction. In late 2015, there was also talks of a full collab project between Noqh and August Fanon called ATM. It is not known what ended up happening to this album, but this duo has released so much incredible music over the years. I assume most of these tracks ended up getting used elsewhere on other projects as well. When Noqh linked up with Griselda, he also met one of the most important people to his career, the god Fahim, who was working as Westside Gunn's barber at the time. Noqh and Fahim started working together and releasing music under the Griselda umbrella. In July of 2016, Noqh executive produced Fahim's record, TGIF, really becoming the first major collaboration between one of hip-hop's most prolific duos going forward. Unfortunately, Noqh and Fahim, who I will refer to as the Dump Gods going forward, had some troubles with Griselda that halted their work under the label. Noqh rapped on a few Griselda joints in early 2017 and went to the Griselda on Steroids tour at Webster Hall in June of 2017. This is where the supposed beef initially started. Supposedly, Gunn asked Fahim for Noqh's number to invite him to Webster Hall, but didn't invite Fahim. Everything seemed fine to the public until late 2017 when the god Fahim dropped a diss track. Gunn then followed that up with Easter Gun Day 3. Supposedly, there was another incident where Gunn wanted to charge Fahim for a verse, which is what led him to drop the diss. In reality, it looks like there never was any real bad blood between these two camps, but these miscommunications led them to not work together for a few years. And while it is sad that we missed out on more collaborations between legends, both parties went on to have some of the most iconic runs of modern hip-hop. Mach-Hommy's 2017 has gone on to be one of the most iconic years that a single artist in hip-hop has ever had, releasing 5 albums and 4 EPs. I'll start off by discussing the collaborations. Mach-Hommy and the god Fahim work so well together because their sensibilities on the mic are so similar, but their vocal styles are so different. Fahim has a higher-pitched voice, focusing mostly on punchlines and quotables, whereas Noqh's voice reaches an entirely different register, with a gravelly texture that is perfect for his more abstract-leaning lyrics. These two released the first 3 volumes of the Dollar Menu series this year, each of which stamped their place as one of the most dynamic duos in the underground. In May, he linked up with Knowledge for an EP called The Spook. This project is one of the smoothest and most underrated within his discography. Noqh and Knowledge have had some back and forth over the years regarding payment for the beats on this record, but I do hope they are able to put it past them because the music they made together was incredible. Speaking of collaborations with incredibly talented producers, Noqh closed out the year with Fete des Morts, aka Dia de los Muertos, a project produced almost entirely by Earl Sweatshirt, with the exception of track 3, which was produced by Navy Blue. Earl was one of the first big artists to co-sign Mach, and really opened him up to a whole new sect of hip-hop fans. Certain versions of this album have also had a bonus track called Causality, which was produced by Knowledge, and also was released separately as a single around this time. Then that brings us to his 4 solo albums this year, each of which reaches a new height of greatness for Mach as an MC and as an artist. The God Fahim started up the Dump God series over in his catalog, but Mach released Dump God Hommy Edition on June 7th of 2017, announcing himself as a true Dump God just like Fahim. This album is another pure hip-hop gem. It features production from some of the most important sound architects in the underground at the time, such as Sadhu Gold, Navy Blue, The Alchemist, Earl Sweatshirt, Lil Wearden, and Preservation. This album is one of the finest examples of what this era of underground hip-hop had to offer, and is widely thought of as one of the best albums that Mach-Hommy has ever made. September 2017 is up there with one of the greatest months that any modern musician has had. On September 2nd, he released the album Dumpmeister, which perfected the dusty underground sound that he had been working towards all these years. This record features a who's who of underground rappers at the time, from Billy Woods and Crime Apple, to Evidence, Husk Kingpin, Denmark Vesey, and more. Also, while it is not confirmed at this time, it is widely believed by many dumpologists that this album may have originally been titled Machiavelli. Just a couple weeks later, he released La Hurts. Mach has said that he speaks all of the love languages, so it's only right that he's able to make an incredible underground rap love album. On this album, Mach dives headfirst into jazz rap, perfecting the decades-old subgenre and putting his own spin on it. There are no features here, just a half hour of Mach spitting over some beautiful loops, radiating with romance and heartbreak. Through this era, Mach was releasing his music on Bandcamp for astronomical numbers. This record specifically was sold for $777.77. Then he closed out September with The Gospel According To, also known as The Gad. This is one of the most highly respected albums in his discography, and one of the finest examples of jazz meeting hip-hop of this millennium. This album expands on his style from La Hurts, embracing the more abstract aspects of his flow and songwriting. This album is incredibly cohesive, even though its recording can be traced back to around 2012. A few of these songs and verses had been reworked from the Super Tape days. Either way, it's a perfect way to cap off one of the greatest years in hip-hop history. The vinyl for this album was originally sold for $999, which was the max that Bandcamp allowed. This was one of the main reasons why he stopped using Bandcamp, because they made it very hard for him to sell his music for what he believed it was worth. The official vinyl for this record is now listed at $3,000 on his website, and has become a holy grail for many record collectors, and the crown jewel of his discography. One scrapped album that was also supposed to be released this year was called 5 O'Clock Shadow. This has been thought to possibly be his full-length Alchemist collaboration, but also was rumored to have work with Knowledge and Earl Sweatshirt on here as well. The cover art was made by August Fanon, who had said that it was an album for Mach and The Alchemist. At the end of 2017, Mach put out a compilation project called MHZ, which had one song from each album that he dropped that year, but it is no longer available. Mach-Hommy dropped so much amazing music in 2017, but the crazy thing is, he was just getting started. After his incredible 2017, Mach continued to deepen his legacy, releasing many great albums a year for each of the next few. He and Fahim teamed back up for a stacked 2018. They gave us a pair of Saturday Night Lights EPs, the album Duck Season, Chinese Algebra, and then Notorious Dump Legends. The Dump Gods also released both Wide Berth and Dump Olympics Wide Berth. Wide Berth follows up TGIF as an album where Mach doesn't show up on the lyric sheet, but instead lends his talents as an executive producer. And that, like I said, is not to be confused with Dump Olympics Wide Berth, which is more of a traditional collaboration album between the two of them, sharing rap duties. In February of 2018, Mach-Hommy released Bulletproof Love, which would have fit right in with the greatness of his 2017 run. This album takes the romance inspiration that was explored on La Hurts and gives it a grittier, dust-filled feeling that delves into jazz, soul, and more traditional underground loops. This one was supposedly recorded earlier in the decade, around 2012, but much like his other albums of this era, it still sounds timeless. 2019 was a very important year for Mach-Hommy, because I think it was his last year of supposed obscurity. Although much of his discography is still not available online, 2019 was the year that he started to put some of his albums on streaming services, which opened up the door for new fans to discover him. This year, the fruits of his labor finally started paying off, and the game started taking notice headed into a new decade. He linked up with the soul assassin legend DJ Muggs for the pair of albums Twos La Twos and Kill 'Em All. These albums are among the darkest sounding of his catalog, with Muggs layering samples that sound like they come from the great beyond. This pair of collaborations was another huge step forward for his popularity. Having so much chemistry with someone who has decades of respect and admiration built up in hip-hop. Mach even attended Cypress Hill's ceremony when they got their star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. This is also where that famous photo of him, George Lopez, and Exhibit came from. Three legends. Mach-Hommy then released Wap Kon Joj that summer. This project was an introduction of sorts for many new fans who were just now tapping into the world of Mach-Hommy. This record has such a unique feeling to it, with his Haitian and French influence in the lyrics, the subject matter immediately setting it apart from the rest of what was releasing at the time. It's on the shorter side in runtime, but so much care was put into the cultivation of a timeless feeling that this record gives you. It feels like an uncovered artifact, with the dust still on its sound waves. At this point, Mach-Hommy had executive produced a few albums for the god Fahim, but he also executive produced It Wasn't Even Close and Jewelry for Your Old Droog. He would go on to executive produce Dump Yad, Krutoy Edition for Droog, and the Yad Fahim for both Droog and Fahim. This trio of MCs formed the group New Religion, and are always a treat to hear together. Mach-Hommy is not a traditional producer in that he doesn't make beats. When he executive produces, he more so does it in the spirit of someone like Rick Rubin. His ear is so adept that his collaborators turn to him to cultivate the vibe of the projects. Mach has described it as a boutique experience, where he is able to give every artist exactly what they need in their own way. When you first get into Mach-Hommy, so much is made about the mystique around him. But as the 2020s rolled around, Mach has been making clear efforts to step out of the shadows and level up his visibility in the mainstream. His 2020 album Mach's Hard Lemonade was a Tidal exclusive, and he even spent the rollout personally responding to fans' questions on video. Everything about the branding and marketing of this record signaled that Mach was taking strides to level up his game around the music. The album itself still maintained the unique vision of Mach-Hommy the artist, even when feeling like it was mixed a little cleaner than his prior records. The following year marked Mach-Hommy's grand return to Griselda with Westside Gunn. Like I said before, the beef between them was always more conjecture than any real bad blood, but seeing them together was a true iconic moment within the modern underground. They got together to make the album Pray for Haiti, this time executive produced by Westside Gunn. This album had some of the best rapping that Mach had spit his entire career. He was linking back up with Griselda, now at the top of their game, and he was locked in, knowing that this would be his introduction to a lot of new ears. This album felt like a full circle moment for his career. After the early days of his career, rapping with Griselda, he was now back with them, and doing some of his best work. After that, he closed out the year with another entry to his Haitian pentalogy with Balan's Cho, Hot Candles, an album that felt much closer to the jazzier, less accessible music of his past, while still being incredible. Around this time, he got the chance to finally answer that age-old question of whether you'd rather have $50,000 or dinner with Jay-Z. Hov had been a fan of Mach's for a few years by this point, and even told him that he held him to the high bar that he holds Jay Electronica. There was even a scrapped verse from Mach-Hommy on the amazing Jay Electronica debut album, A Written Testimony, but that verse will probably never see the light of day. Along with meeting Hov, he also met Usher and Beyonce, both of whom admitted they were big fans of his. In 2022, he got back to his roots, releasing multiple projects a year. He and the god Fahim linked back up for a pair of sequels to some of their most beloved work, with Dollar Menu 4 and Duck Season Tiger Style, and he also released a quadrilogy of Dump God EPs, called Triz 9, Triz Nate, Triz Nathan, and Triz Nathaniel. Each of these EPs was in collaboration with a different producer, and it called back to the Super Tape days for many diehard fans. At this point of his career, Noqh had mastered the balancing act of creating bigger albums for the new fans above ground, while also making music that only his true investors would be tapped into. In 2023, he continued his run, making Notorious Dump Legends Volume 2 with Fahim, and executive producing Big Chico's album, Block Barry White, which was a step into a newer, more modern sound. Mach-Hommy has always felt like the future of underground hip-hop, both from a sonic and a business sense. But now it's time we start looking at his future. Last year he released his album Rich Ass Haitian, which felt like the first step into the future of Mach-Hommy. The album featured much of the same lyrical and creative flares that fans had come to expect from Mach, but also took risks that he had not yet attempted. This album closes out his Haitian pentalogy, and while it's a great conclusion to the series, carrying on the tradition of making unique music that Haiti can be proud of, it also covers new ground for him. The title track is the most popular song on the record, and it features 03 Greedo with a beat from Kaytranada. On paper, these artists don't sound like they match Mach's typical sound, but Mach is able to adapt into something fresh here. Mach-Hommy appeared on Kaytranada's 2021 EP Intimidated for the track Pay for Haiti, which gave people a taste of this new sound that Mach is capable of. In the aftermath of Rich Ass Haitian's release, Mach had given more interviews with mainstream hip-hop media than he had given his entire career. One of the most exciting things that he talked about in these interviews is his relationship with Kaytranada. He claims that they have around 30 songs already recorded together, so be on the lookout for a full Mach-Hommy and Kaytranada tape coming soon. And that isn't the only thing that Mach has been teasing. He announced that his next album coming will be entirely produced by Conductor Williams. Mach had also teased a record called From Hades with Love, which was intended to be a sequel to HBO. It's not known currently whether this was reworked to become Rich Ass Haitian, or if we still have this to look forward to in the future. And lastly, in 2020, Mach-Hommy announced an album called Haitian Space Base, which is entirely produced by Raz G. So here's hoping we get to hear that soon as well. On top of the music, Mach has been using his newfound notoriety since Pray for Haiti to give back to his home country in many ways. And as his image and brand continue to grow, I wouldn't be surprised to see him do a lot of good over there in the coming years. Mach-Hommy is one of the most interesting artists in the modern landscape of underground hip-hop. His style and strategies have been more influential in a short time than most people have even realized. It's crazy looking back to the various points of his career, because there was no blueprint before him. To come from Haiti, then New Jersey, and have a career for yourself by selling your music directly to fans, to release multiple albums a month, and sell each for hundreds, even thousands of dollars, all while covering your face and letting the music expand your reach farther than it ever should have. It's amazing. In this video, I tried to break down everything that you need to know about Mach-Hommy. But if there's only one thing that you know about him, then it should be that Mach-Hommy is an icon. End quote. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. I want to give a special thanks to Luke B, who is one of the biggest Mach-Hommy fans in the world and really helped me a lot with the researching of this video. I always love making videos on Mach because he was one of the first artists that I made a video on that I was really proud of way back in 2021. So I hope you guys enjoyed this one as well. Let me know down in the comments, what is your favorite Mach-Hommy album? Also, it is a brand new year, so I want to know who else should I make videos on this year. Let me know that down in the comments as well. I also want to give a special shout out to my patrons who make it possible for me to make all these videos for you guys. I recently added 2 new tiers to the Patreon, and there's a lot of bonus features to each of them. So head over to patreon.com/defgoldblum to check that out. I feel like I'm really rolling with my videos lately, and I'm not slowing down for you guys. I got a lot more headed your way. So stay tuned, stay safe, and stay def. Thanks for watching.